Welcome to our session on how a lack of diversity in our teams leads to biased products on behalf of Women in Identity. My name is Melissa Carvalho. I am the Canadian Ambassador for Women in Identity. I am also the Vice President of Identity and Access Management at RBC. I have 20 years of identity and access management experience, and that experience spans across North America, both in industry, the financial and healthcare sector, as well as in consulting. Now, you may think that Women in Identity is only about women in identity, but that's not true. Women in Identity is a registered, not-for-profit membership organization run by volunteers whose purpose it is to promote parity with respect to opportunity, reward, recognition, and professional mobility in relation to gender, intersectionality, age, race, ability, ethnicity, sexual orientation or identity, creed, or social status. It is governed by an executive board, an advisory team, and a leadership team. Everyone at all levels of Women in Identity are working completely on a voluntary basis. We span the globe. We have 11 ambassadors across the world and over 1,000 members, and we are continuing to grow. We focus on 4 main areas: development, research, education, events. And each of these areas are intended to promote diversity and inclusion for all. But I'm not here today to talk about women in identity. I'm here today to talk to you about working together to build a better tomorrow, whether it be in our daily work lives or even just as consumers who use products. Diversity and change begins with us. It transcends organizational lines, and it transcends any one component of ethnicity, gender, race, etc. So let's start by looking at the definition of bias. Bias means prejudice. It means a strong inclination of the mind or a preconceived opinion about something or someone. A bias may be favorable or unfavorable. Bias in favor of or against an idea. You are biased. I am biased. We all have bias. In fact, it is that bias that helped us evolve through the generations. It helped us take a large amount of information and sort it quickly. Bias can be useful. In science, we make hypotheses, and a hypothesis is a bias. It's a preconceived assumption. However, biases have downsides. It creates blind spots, and those blind spots can impact what we deliver, how we build products, and how we interact with our teams and with our customers. So what does this look like? Well, if you look at this scenario for a second, or this picture, before I play the video, it's actually a video from the Facebook office in San Francisco, a real-life scenario. And this is a soap dispenser. It is not a hand sanitizer. Now, you may be looking at the picture and think, well, relative to the last number of months, this must be a hand sanitizer product, and what a great idea to have it close to a paper towel dispenser. And if you, like me, have used hand sanitizers, sometimes it dispenses too much. That's not the scenario. This scenario was recorded way before the pandemic, and really what the intent of this is to show is how product biases can go wrong. In this video, you will see that a white hand or white paper towel will allow the soap dispenser to dispense soap. However, if a person of color puts their hand under the soap dispenser, it will not dispense any soap. And it begs the question, what were the team who built this solution thinking? What was the makeup of that team? What did it look like? Who tested this solution? And now what happens to the end user who has just gone into the bathroom in this case, or washroom in this case, and wants to use the hand sanitizer or soap dispenser in the example that's presented here? So let's play the video.
Futurism. Entering the future. Nice. Okay, Noel, we try now. Come to your honey. Two black or?
Two black.
Yeah.
So what I'll
Come
do?
again. Come again, Sashi.
No.
Nah, you two back over way.
What I have to do to get
what you have to do
this is how ritualist thing is.
Yeah.
I have to use that piece of white. Let's say a napkin and show it.
Again, put your napkin again.
Napkin again.
Right, put your hand out.
What's it called in my hand?
Man, the black man getting fight all over.
Now that's an example of a product that really has no security implications. So are there implications of bias in security and identity? Well, there are two. The first implication is how bias impacts our customers. We deliver solutions, whether it's security solutions on top of digital products our organizations deliver, or security solutions directly to an end consumer. What do the makeup of those end consumers look like? Do they all look like us and act like us, or are they a very diverse population? The second example is the bad actors. Bad actors come from all walks of life. And so if we are going to combat or mitigate against these threats, we need to make sure that our teams are also coming from all walks of life in order to fight them. If you're involved in design, development, test of a solution, if you manage teams, think to yourself honestly, are we testing our solutions for a wide range of people? Do we really think about the scenarios of the different diversity situations that may exist? And do they pose a threat to our business? Now, it might be hard to imagine diversity if you haven't lived it. And so let's take a look at a couple of examples. Let's look at the examples of artificial intelligence products: Siri, Alexa, Cortana, and Google Assistant. And I know there are a lot more, but just let's look at these common examples. Are we building products that enforce stereotypes? This is a real-life example of how these solutions were programmed to answer a standard set of questions. And when you think about it, the teams who built it, what were they thinking by programming these responses? Who tested this solution? What was that test group or test audience looking like? And more importantly, what happens to the next generation or us who use these tools on a regular basis? Are we pre-programming subconsciously in our mind some of these stereotypes because we leverage them? And we as consumers, have we written or complained about these solutions? These impact our daily lives. Now, these are just examples of AI products. You may think, well, these are fun products to have in our homes or in our workplace, but they don't actually impact our daily lives. So let's look at passports. Passports are something we use when we travel, and the UK government decided to use biometrics in their passports. This is a BBC article from last year, and it talks about the fact that people of color, primarily women, were not able to use the UK biometric passport solution. It just wouldn't work for them in the majority of times they tried. Now, the solution was well intended. They wanted to have stronger identity authentication. Many of us think about using multi-factor authentication in the products we build. But do they work for all? What was the makeup of the team who built this solution? This wasn't what they intended. They didn't intend to exclude individuals. Who tested this solution? And more importantly, what do these users do now? What do the users, the women of color, do when they get to the passport office or cross the border and try and use the solution? And what are the bad actors able to do in this situation? This is just one example. Let's look at another example of registration in New Zealand. This is an article from Reuters of how even the registering of the identity was causing issues. Who were the teams who built this solution? What were they thinking when they built it? What was their composition? Who tested this solution? And what happens now? Now, biometrics is a more advanced identity concept for many products. Many products don't use such solutions. And so let's look at the simple user ID and password. Now, when the inventors of user ID and password came up with the solution, when we deploy them in our products, what are we thinking? Have we taken into account ageism? Do we take into account our children? Do we take into account when we offer solutions how they are to remember a user ID and password to register? Many children these days are doing virtual online training. How do they log into those identity services? Is the parent expected to use their identity? And when the parent uses their identity, are their identity being compromised because now they are sharing their identity with their children? What happens in the case where they have more than one child? And what do the bad actors do in this scenario? How do the bad actors manipulate the situation? Then you might say, well, it's education. And what are the threats? What is the risk involved in this type of ageism example? So let's look at another ageism example. Let's look at this scenario in this case when we move the spectrum from our children to those that are elderly. When you think about the services they might be registering for, banking, financial services, retail services, grocery, shopping online, what happens in this scenario? Do they always remember their user ID and password? Are they fluent with technology? Do they know how to register for such technology? What are the individuals who build the solution thinking? What are the individuals who are testing the solution thinking? And more importantly, what do the consumers do when they try and leverage the service? We also have to think about the bad actors, that second implication. What do they do to manipulate the situation in this circumstance? Security is really important, but it's not only focused on age. Let's think about ability. Have we considered this user when we think about user ID and password? Do we think about the lack of ability to type in the user ID and password into our systems? If you think back to the pandemic in Canada and the government relief programs, what we offered as a service, how were people without the ability to type in a user ID and password able to register for the service? When we raced to issue these services, what did those who built it, what were they thinking, and what were their teams made up of? Who tested this solution? Most importantly, what happened to the individuals who needed the aid the most? Were they able to register? What was that experience like for them? And how did the bad actors manipulate this situation? Those are just a handful of examples of bias. I didn't need to look too far when I researched this. However, let's move gears or shift gears for a second and think about how do we fix this problem? Steps that we can take to make for a better tomorrow. Let's look and reflect on this quote. When you're looking for teamwork and problem solving, you need diversity. If you end up with a very homogeneous team, they'll become a team really fast. And sometimes us as managers really want our team to bond really quickly. However, they will hit a plateau of ability and they will get stuck in a group think. They will literally think the same way. You need to have diversity of gender, sex, race, age, so that you can problem solve better. It's a very true way of thinking. If you look at our teams, do they have diversity? Are we better able to do threat detection? It's not necessarily just about how well teams gel, but how they challenge each other. I heard a saying the other day, growth and comfort don't coexist. And it's a true situation. Sometimes we need to be uncomfortable to grow. So let's look at the makeup of our cybersecurity teams. There is a school of thought out there that believes that in order to better take advantage and better thrive, we need to hire a younger generation because they understand the digital world, tooling or solutions like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. However, research shows it's not actually the case. Our baby boomers have a strong understanding of such common security threats as phishing and ransomware. And it's most likely only because they've been exposed longer to the training on this topic. It is really important for us when we build our teams to think about the makeup. So when we think about, as we build our cybersecurity teams, what do we need to think? What is the highest skill? What is the most important skill? How do we change the trend? How do we change our way of thinking? The number one skill of cybersecurity is passion. When you think about the other core skills, problem solving, determination, thirst for knowledge, you start to gravitate to say, why is it that when I hire cybersecurity professionals, I need to have a university degree and it needs to be in cyber? It's not necessarily the case. Hackers today don't always have university degrees or college degrees. They don't necessarily specialize in cybersecurity. And when you think about core roles of cybersecurity, advisor, defender, fighter, you start to reflect on the type of skills they need to thrive in this area. And you start to ask yourself, what do we want our cyber team to be made of? What do the bad actors look like? What do our consumers look like? Now, when you marry this with the cyber shortage that we will have in 2021, research shows that globally, it'll be a shortage of 3.5 million. In Canada alone, over 8,000. And while this information was published before the pandemic, a lot of the numbers still stand very true. They believe that the unemployment rate of cybersecurity will be 0%. Now is the best time, better than ever, to take advantage of the fact that we have to hire a large number of people and we need diversity. So let's take a real life use case. Let's take my team. If I look at diversity making better solutions and I look at the top skills of how they got in, I reflect on a handful of individuals that I work with. Let's take Julie Leo, for example. She doesn't have a cybersecurity degree. She has a criminology degree in arts. And she got in by her skills. She runs my app support team. And when you think about app support of identity solutions, you need 24/7 troubleshooting support. She does a phenomenal job because she understands things from the end user's perspective. She doesn't quote the technical SLAs or the technical information. She tackles the problem by putting herself in the user's shoes. Nicole Landry, she's a co-lead of mine for Women in Identity. And she got in through determination. She runs my business analysis team, and she cascades the message throughout her team to put themselves in the position of the end user as they build journeys and use cases. She has an HR and a commerce degree. Azine, she simply just applied for a role. She now is the director of my cloud identity and access management security controls. And while she has a banking and science degree, she knew that she didn't have school education on cloud. Frankly, not many people have training or education on cloud, as it is so new. Nina has a background in film, TV, and production. She got her role by networking. She does a phenomenal job. She, in fact, is recording this session today. And she thinks in a different way. It's not just pure cybersecurity. She thinks of a way in which it will target the end user and the consumer. And then finally, last but not least, is Sonia. She runs my identity and access management operations team. Her background is in education and history, and she got into this field by pure persistence. Education is near and dear to my heart because my background is in Teachers College. I graduated with a Teachers College degree, and my intent was to be a teacher. The point of this study or this review was to show there's an opportunity for us all. There's an opportunity for us to think differently, and it doesn't necessarily need to be with degrees or education. It can simply be because we are focused on how you got in and a set of core skills, passion. So what can we do today? Well, we can accept that we are all biased. We can accept that our teams are biased. and we can accept that the lack of diversity is a threat. We need to design our security products with diversity in mind, diversity by design. If we start including more varied viewpoints, the outcomes are going to be better. This isn't a matter of checking off the equality box or checking off the diversity box. It is not simply a numbers game. We have seen and studies have shown that the lack of diversity has far-reaching consequences. And in order for us to strive to protect against the risk, we need to start to close that gap, the risk by casting our net far and wide. Now, we are potentially going into a bit of a recession. Some would argue that we're here today. And while I've shown you statistics or numbers that say we will have a shortage in cybersecurity, you may be stopping and thinking about how will I hire more individuals for diversity when I have no hiring tokens? The answer is we need to think outside the box. We don't need to hire the individuals to leverage the individuals. We need to stop thinking of our teams as the people who directly report to us and start thinking of the teams as the global world. If you're building a solution and you only have people who are of a certain diverse background, then you need to start thinking about who tests your solution. You can leverage individuals in the community, you can leverage programs like Women in Identity, but we need to ensure that the products that we issue have diversity and inclusion in mind. So how can you help? Well, if you're in cybersecurity already, you can give back. You can be a mentor, join networking events, be visible, speak at a conference like IdentifyNORTH, blog. And speaking at conferences has gotten a lot simpler now that we're virtual. You can sit at home and record a session in advance and have it play. You can foster early talent, volunteer in schools, partake in cyber camps. One of the things a group of individuals in my team did this summer is they offered on a volunteer basis a cyber camp because parents were not able to take their kids to camp. It's an opportunity, and you can create that opportunity. Another area is if you're in management, you can hire with diversity in mind. Change the way in which you're hiring in the job description. Now, if you're not in cyber and you want to get into cyber, be visible, attend networking events, make your connections, create that opportunity, embrace learning, do it with confidence, show how your skills can align and be beneficial. Most importantly, you can't be what you can't see. So we really need to ensure that if we're expecting to solve real world problems, then our teams need to reflect the real world. If our systems are intended to be used by everybody, they need to be built by everyone. I wanted to thank IdentifyNORTH for giving us the opportunity to speak today, and I wanted to thank our corporate sponsors. Without their sponsorship, we would not be able to invest in the research and the activities that we do. Finally, I wanted to thank all of you for listening to me today. And if you would like to join our community, you're more than welcome to join. Here is our contact information. And most importantly, it is free. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you in the next session, which will be a panel discussion. Thank you.